everybody. I'm Stephanie Rich. I'm head of platform at Bread and Butter Ventures, and welcome to the Real Pitch MN. We've got 5 awesome teams who are going to pitch for our investors here today and get some real life feedback from what an investor thinks of their pitch. So I've got Mary Grove and Brett Brohl here. Can each of you introduce yourselves? Tell us a little bit more about you.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Hello, Twin Cities Startup Week. Thank you so much for tuning in to our session. I'm Mary Grove, one of the managing partners here at Bread and Butter. And my background specifically is primarily in tech and early stage investing. So I started my career at Google, where I spent the first 15 years. I worked on the IPO deal team, did early stage product and new business development. And then I also started the Google for Startups effort, which supports startups and entrepreneurs in over 100 countries. And so my passion is really about in working with entrepreneurs, specifically at these earliest stages, and also ecosystems outside Silicon Valley. I'm also the co-founder and executive director of a nonprofit here in town called Silicon North Stars, which helps support youth from economically underserved backgrounds towards futures in tech, which is actually how I first met Brett and how I've gotten to know Steph as well. So it's great to be with all of you today.
And I'm Brett Brohl. I'm the other managing partner of Bread and Butter Ventures. I was an entrepreneur for a long time, so I built a few companies, both venture-backed and bootstrapped. I've raised venture capital. I have been in the investing side of the table for about the last 5 years, both as an angel and then as an institutional investor through Bread and Butter Ventures. And for some of you in the Minnesota ecosystem, you might have known it originally as the Syndicate Fund. Additionally, I'm currently the managing director and built the Techstars Forum, the Fork Accelerator, and I helped build the Techstars Retail Accelerator. So I've been involved in the Techstars ecosystem for about 5 years now, and really enjoy investing through our fund and also getting to run the Techstars programs.
Awesome. Thanks for those intros. You both see a lot of pitches throughout the year. How many pitches of startups do you think you see, and what context is that typically in? Is it short pitches, long pitches, whole variety?
For me, it's all over the place. I probably listened to about 700, 800 pitches last year, I'd imagine, in a variety of forms, and met with a large number of those founders. So it's things like rapid, back-to-back demo day type pitches or speed dating type pitches. And then, we're doing, I'd imagine I'm doing at least 1 or 2 one-on-one longer form 20 minutes. Usually my segments it's like a 20 or 30 minute time slot to meet an entrepreneur for the first time one-on-one. Just to give a concept of how many and how quickly those meetings actually are.
Yes, I'd say cumulatively across our whole team, we see north of 1,500 inbound and proactive outbound opportunities a year. And it is a mix of the one-to-many. Some of my favorite events are the beta backers showcase, where you can see a lot of things in an hour and then follow up as you like. Brett's the walking ad for it today. Then we also do participate in a lot of the mentoring, the mentor madness, the sort of speed dating format. But I would say by and large, it is one-on-ones. And it typically for me is that initial 30-minute meeting, which goes by super quick in both directions. And so I think this is a great format to practice getting the little elevator plus pitch, if you will. And then of course, after that, we'll do much longer meetings and the follow-on conversations, but it usually is that very quick intro.
And last but not least, at Bread and Butter, we invest in a kind of specific stage of companies. We're going to hear a whole variety today. How would you describe the stage of company that we invest in?
So we do early stage, which for us means pre-seed and seed stage investing. So that's typically, the founders have an MVP, a product live in the market. It may or may not have users yet. It may or may not have revenue. Most often it does, actually. We love to dig into the analysis of that data, but early on in the life cycle, and typically that means, the founders are raising around anywhere between $1 and $3 million. Could be a little less, could be a little more, but on average, those are the goalposts that we see.
Awesome. Well, let's get started. So I'm going to let our first entrepreneur in and we will get going. Okay, so first up, we have got Chris from Enlight. So Chris, you've got 5 minutes. Take it away.
Hi, my name is Demercy Christel, and I'm the founder of Enlight, and we are helping teachers become experts on their students. So as a student, I know that the lack of student engagement and coupled with high teacher burnout is actually resulting in very bad education environment in the US. Teachers are overwhelmed and students are bored, and distance learning right now is such a disaster. As a matter of fact, about like teacher turnover is a $7.3 billion problem in the US because 44% of teachers are actually leaving the teaching field after 5 years because they're not making the impact that they thought they're going to be making when they go into teaching. And 7 million students are actually missing school every year because, well, like me, school is boring. And so, like, as you can see with the times right now, like teachers are saying, well, we have students who are, we don't even get to see how we're going to build relationships with them. And we have, or even just make that impact. And then there's like the Black Lives Matter movement that's also going on. How, like, and the biggest part about like reaching students is also building those relationships. And that's why with our app, we want to provide educators the information that they need to productively engage and personalize and even motivate their students in the classroom and behind screens. What this does is that it actually gives teachers the impact that they seek. It enables personalized and inclusive learning environments, and it actually accelerates relationship building through social emotional learning and student feedback. So the way our app works is very simple. In less than 30 minutes of class, students are building unique profiles, and we present this student data on a dashboard that teachers can actually easily digest, and then we actually enable teachers to continuously learn from their students through feedback. And so this student profile, this is myself. I'm really into weightlifting, and I love podcasts, cars. Like I'm really into gaming. But if you truly get to know who Chris is, entrepreneurship is my passion. And like I truly believe that entrepreneurs are the biggest like asset in the world right now. And if I could solve any problem in my community or the world, it would be world hunger because of the background as a refugee of knowing what poverty was. But if you want to know how to teach me visually, and that will get it. And so through that, building that, like you get to know who I am. And so we also did like Enlight Surveys, which actually also continuously like allows teachers to get to know who their students are. And so through all this information, we can actually provide teachers a robust understanding of who their students are. So if you know about 80% of your students are visual, you know how to teach them. You know what jokes to even teach in the class, to tell in your classroom. And so through that, my goal and our opportunity, we have about 3.2 million teachers in the US. And 76% of them are actually devoting more time to building and teaching relationship building, but only 22% of those teachers feel like they're ready to teach social emotional learning. And that's why we want to become the relationship accelerator for the classroom. So this market is really big, especially personalized learning and social emotional learning, and they're growing really, really fast right now. And so my goal was to get 4 of my high school teachers to try this. And after a month, I had 50 of them come in, and I was charging them about like $50 per teacher, while I picked about 20 of them. We had 20 teachers basically becoming experts on more than 300 students. We made $1,200 in a month. This is teachers paying out of pocket with like our word spreading like wildfire. Right now, we have more than 160 teachers on our wait list. We have 2 schools committed, and we're getting ready to build version 2. And all our growth, like I said, has been very organic. Our pricing is very simple. We're very transparent. It's $50 a teacher, $450 per department, and about $5,000 per school building. And so our landscape also, we have a really good go-to-market strategy, and Google Forms is literally the biggest way that our teachers are solving this problem. And so we have a really good standing right now to make it very easy and self-procurement for teachers to come in. And the team is myself, Sean Ross, and Thomas Murr, and we believe that learning really occurs when teachers are building meaningful relationships with their students in the classroom. Right now, we're raising our pre-seed round, and we're going to be raising a seed round next year for product development. Yeah, thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
Um,
That was 5 minutes exactly.
Wow.
so I'll jump in first, a little bit of feedback. It felt really rushed. So it felt like a really rushed pitch where you were like, here's all the slides, I gotta get through everything, and let me talk as fast as I can, and get through it all. And so just be really, and I know we gave everybody on this a 5-minute pitch window. That was the instructions that we gave. And so tailor your pitch to the time that you're given. And so you understand on your slides and slide deck that, okay, how long is it gonna, like, what's 5 minutes look like and I'd rather have you spend time on the most key points than try to crush all that information in at once, because you can always have a chance at a follow-up, and especially with like pitch events and things where you do tend to have about a 5-minute time limit. The goal of those events, it's not to get an investment decision out of that event. The goal of that event is to get a meeting, right? And so understand what the different objectives of different ways you're pitching or where they are and where they're coming from. And in something like this, again, your goal is to get that next meeting with the investor. So rather than crushing all of the information, what is what's that one hook that you really want to make sure gets out there, and spend time on it and don't rush through it. And so that would be probably my biggest piece of advice on the pitch that you just went through with us. You had a lot of really good information in there, but like, honestly, it's hard for me to remember it, right? Because you just threw so much at me so quickly. That's probably my number one thing. And I have a couple others, but I'll let Mary go in first.
Awesome.
Sure. Well, congrats, Chris. It was a really great pitch. I love seeing the update and progress on the business and how you're telling that narrative. I think a couple things top of mind. One is you hit upon it a little bit in the beginning, but you do have tremendous tailwinds right now coming off COVID-19 and distance learning and heading into that. So I would definitely lean into that portion while also saying this is a sustainable, sector and industry for the long haul. But we think this might be a particularly critical moment for selling this product at this time into this market. So I think that's part of the narrative. I think you did a wonderful job with the flow of telling that story of, this is the problem, here's our tech, here's some of the feedback, here's the vision, which was great. I know it was a compressed timeline, but looking closer at when you were breaking down the addressable market to two different things. One is the market opportunity itself. And second is on the customer side, who is the customer? I would, not in a 5-minute pitch, but in a long form pitch and in the deck specifically, try to really tease out, sort of tighten up the analysis around total addressable market, the serviceable addressable portion of it, and how does that translate into revenue and your revenue projections? Because we saw a couple different slides that were answering parts of that, but kind of making it, I would compress that into one slide that tells a very clear story. And then on the customer side, it wasn't clear to me it sounded like the model was potentially to sell into teachers, for teachers directly to be the end consumer or in the paying customer, potentially the school itself, potentially at the district level. So I think just teasing that clarification of, is this a multi-channel model, or is it phased, helping us understand that. And then again, outside the context of a limited 5-minute pitch, but I would love to hear more about the specific backgrounds of your team and how that makes you unique. I know you personally, and I know you have a phenomenal personal story. So I think getting into more of that, and it's powerful. This is a platform being built by students for students, right? And so I think leaning into that team part, we just love to hear that a little bit more. But really, really terrific job.
Awesome. Thank you.
And that's a great follow-up for Brett. Do you have any thoughts on anything that you would, as an investor, want to hear or want to add to that pitch?
I think that the part that's probably still missing for me a little bit, you touched on it, but I didn't love it, right? Is that pain point at the beginning. So, and part of it, I think, was you were trying to rush through it. And so, but really, I love, as an investor, understanding pain points and understanding why can this person not live without it? Why is it a must-have and not a nice to have? Must-haves are much easier to sell than a nice-to-have product. And so, I'm constantly thinking about that when I hear a pitch: is this something that I really that an end consumer has to have? And so, in your case, why does the teacher or the school? Why is this a must-have for that teacher or school? And you talked a little bit about it and skirted around a little bit about it, but it was it wasn't focused. You said something about teacher turnover is high, but then it didn't tie the teacher turnover to your product. You said, getting teachers want to understand their students better, but you need to really, rather than taking a shotgun approach of having a whole bunch of things out there, what's one or two key things that you can really drill in on and say, this is that one thing that people can't live without. Here's the why behind it. And I think that would be really helpful with your story to tie it into the next round. Here's the product as well. And one other quick piece on when you're doing your product demo, going from the student overview to the survey was all of a sudden we're a survey company, right? And so making sure understanding how those tie together is important as well, which I don't think we got to. So just as a heads up.
Awesome. I'm going to cut everybody off there. Chris, great job. Thank you so much. And we will talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks, Chris. Take care.
Thanks for doing this. We appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
So up next, we've got Erica from No Limits. So Erica, take it away.
Awesome. I'm going to share my screen with y'all. All right, can y'all see that? Awesome. So my name is Erica. I founded a company called No Limits, and I kind of want to invite you on the journey of how we came to be. To do that, we need to go back about 2 years. This is me. I was super active. I was hiking about 40 to 50 miles a week. I was also a competitive ballroom dancer and was even the mascot at my university. So yes, that's actually a picture of me in the bird suit there. And all of that changed really suddenly when I lost my leg in a car accident. And I shared the things that I used to do because I was super determined to get back to them. And I knew in my head, I was like, those are the things that are going to be really hard to get back to, but it actually caught me off guard. I was frustrated by really small things. And it actually turned out to be those tiny frustrations adding up throughout the day that were more difficult than getting back to those big things that I mentioned before. I started wearing sweatpants and shorts all the time. I gave up on style practicality, really. Even started cutting off the leg of my jeans like you see in this photo, just so I could get back to wearing a pair of jeans or 3/4 of a pair of jeans. It actually caused a lot of skin problems for me. This is not recommended for amputees. I was a costume designer in college also, so I one day added a hidden zipper to my pants, and it allowed me to wear a pair of pants that I hadn't worn in about 1.5 years. And getting back to that familiar pair of jeans was super refreshing. And also it was the first time that I felt like people weren't seeing me prosthetic first. And I'm not alone in this problem. There are 1 million amputees in the United States today, and an additional 200,000 face amputation every year. The sad fact is these numbers are projected to double by the year 2050 because of the rise in cardiovascular disease. So we started talking to amputees, hundreds of them, and we found that by talking to people with physical differences, that this is a very small window into a much larger problem. So if this circle represents the number of amputees in the United States, this large gold circle represents the number of people who struggle to dress themselves every day because of an adaptive need. And that translates actually into a fairly large business opportunity. This is an article from Vogue Business highlighting the $400 billion adaptive clothing opportunity, but it's really an untapped marketplace. The reason for that is because it's not so easy to design for adaptive problems. It really takes a lot of careful co-creation. And so we created No Limits, which is an adaptive clothing brand made by adaptive people. That's really what sets us apart. We carefully dive into the problems that each adaptive segment faces in order to solve their problems best. So I want to invite you into our journey for adaptive pants. So we design our pants to fit around the shape of around the extra that a prosthesis provides. We install hidden zippers so that it makes it easier to dress, undress, and also make prosthetic adjustments during the day. And we use durable materials because prosthetics are made out of carbon fiber parts, which wear down traditional materials very quickly. There are players in the adaptive space, but often designed for children or for seniors who have caretakers. So we're really aiming for that middle space, independent adults who just want to have clothing that's able to work for them. Which leads into our revenue streams. Right now, we have an e-commerce B2C platform. We're selling direct to consumer on our own site, but we are in the Target Incubator program right now, and we're exploring partnerships with large retailers and distributors such as Walmart.com and Target.com for us. And then a cool opportunity in the future is adaptive clothing actually is easier to protect with intellectual property than traditional clothing lines. Licensing out that IP could allow brands who want to expand their reach to adaptive segments to be able to use our IP to reach more segments themselves. We've had incredible feedback. We were in the Baylor University edition. We're members of the Future Founders Fellowship based in Chicago. We were Student Startup of the Year, and I was Female Entrepreneur of the Year at the University of Iowa. Our story was featured in USA Today, and as I mentioned before, we're currently in the Target Incubator program. We have an incredible team. Brian is my super talented biomechanical engineer CTO, and he thinks about everything from that lens. And Mindy Shire was actually the founder of Runway of Dreams and designer on the Tommy Hilfiger adaptive line, and she has joined us now in an advisory role. So the next steps, we're going to manufacture our pants for amputees. We need 2 additional hires in marketing and technical design. Really need to shift our focus to marketing and brand awareness and product development of our next line, which is sensory-friendly clothing for adults. So we are raising a $750,000 seed round to fulfill these needs. Thank you so much, and I hope that you too can live life with no limits.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Erica. If you want to come off screen sharing,
Yeah.
we'll get some feedback going. Mary, do you want to start us off?
Yes. So Erica, terrific pitch and great presentation. Thank you. I know we met briefly in the Target program. I was really excited to hear the full story. So first of all, congratulations on what you've built and also on what you've translating your own life experience into a company, which is, I think you brilliantly nailed weaving in your personal story, and as many great entrepreneurs do, are solving a problem for themselves that millions or hundreds of millions of other people have. So I think that was spot on, and I love that narrative piece is really powerful. I was curious to dig in. You would love to hear more, as you think about additional pitch conversations or longer form pitches, into your thinking around the opportunities for the direct to consumer e-commerce play versus the retail play. Sizing that up into what the ultimate market opportunity is, and do you think it's going to be a blend? Will you prioritize one more than the other? Also, where are you today more concretely with respect to those two? Are the products live in market? What's the customer feedback to the extent that they are? Any sort of data or numbers that you can ground that in the go-to-market plan, if you will, I think would be really useful to get a clear view on. I think that I would love to hear, I got really excited at the end when you went through your roadmap about what's next. That's a great slide to have as far as this is what we're raising, here's the use of proceeds, what we'll do. Give us the 10,000 foot picture of what this company ultimately becomes, and what's the big vision. You talked next about the sensory line, which I think has really piqued my curiosity. So I'd love to hear just a teaser of, that's not necessarily what the next round gets us, but where does this business go in 5 years? Here's all the markets. Are we planning to expand internationally? Kind of zoom out for us at the end there. And then I think a little bit more on the team. And I think we heard a lot of your really interesting background. So maybe double clicking on the other 2 team members and how they're uniquely qualified, plus the roadmap, tying that to the roadmap of here's where we're going next from a team perspective. But just loved the narrative that you told.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that feedback.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think for short format pitch, which is what this is, right? I think it was really good. I like it when founders use a personal story up front, like what you did. I think that's a great way to draw people in, and kind of like always talk about hooks, like how do you get the next meeting? And I think it's a really interesting like founder market fit type hook where people will be interested in talking with you more about what you're doing. For the short format, I actually don't know that I would go, and a lot of things I heard Mary saying were around market size, right? Like where are you going? What's the big vision? How big is the market? There's a lot of things that I was hearing her say. And I think that one thing you did when you talked about there are lines for children and for seniors, you actually, and you put yourself in the middle, you almost shrunk your market all of a sudden there, right? Where like in my mind, I was never like, I had zero concerns about competition in the space, like in my mind, right? Like I think that most investors and people that are talking to you are going to have like, you're going to have to educate them on the market because it's not something that a lot of us are thinking about, to be frank, right? And so all of a sudden you took something that like some people might actually some people will likely perceive as a really small niche market to start, and you shrunk it for them, right? And so I don't think you need that. I don't know that you would need that anywhere when you get into like diligence or questions about like, are you focused on a certain segment? Saying something like, yeah, we're focused on like this in-between market to start, but like we certainly have applications across the broad entire market would probably be a better answer. And so don't put yourself in a hole or shrink yourself there. I understand the need to have focus. Again, in a longer format pitch, I would be interested in, okay, you're live on e-commerce, how's it going? Right, so I am interested in like, how's it going so far? And I love like, especially on e-com plays, like be ready, make sure you know your numbers when you get into that. Like what's your CAC, what's your customer LTV, what's your average order volume? How often do people repeat? Like those 4 pieces of data and information are core to any startup in e-com. And so you need to make sure you know those really well. And I'll like that whenever anybody asks those. And again, we didn't get into that today. So it's not I'm not saying you don't, I'm just saying be ready for those. And then projections, right? Like, so thinking through, here's where we're going. So just to reiterate what Mary said, here's where we're going as a company. And you don't need to get into specifics, but I love always asking like, what's the big vision? How do you take over the world? Is one of my favorite questions. And so those are a couple of pieces that I'd love to see.
Awesome. Thank you. That's all super helpful.
Awesome. Well, that went really fast, but Erica, that was awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate this opportunity of like having a low stakes kind of practice and feedback as we go into our funding round, because this is all so new and it's passed from, it seems like a founder to founder kind of passing of knowledge, and we've struggled to find that. So thank you, really. There's some
awesome videos out there about fundraising.
yeah, I got to check that out.
Brett's Brain on YouTube.
Sounds good.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Erica.
Thank you.
Thanks, Erica. That was awesome.
Next up, we've got Kong from Neighbor Crate. Take it away.
Hey. So yes, we are Neighbor Crate. Our mission is to build a true enjoyment of local foods through a sustainable food system. And we are a two-sided marketplace helping local food makers sell directly to customers and for customers to buy local fresh foods. So my name is Kong. I'm the founder and CEO. When I was younger, I was always oblivious to how much we consumed in terms of food. But after college, I realized it wasn't necessarily our fault to be consumers. It's just really our nature. And that kind of helped me build a fresh perspective about the struggles we face, and found that it really is just some companies that really accelerated our human consumption behaviors. And so being a consumer who use all these products, I really want to build a company that can serve us better. And that's just kind of our overview of how I started with Neighbor Crate. And so with Neighbor Crate, the problem we're tackling is that the current food supply chain was just not designed to support local and small producers. And it's a great system, but it really only just helps large manufacturers or specialty companies, right? Examples of this would be like coffee beans from South America or non-food products like electronics. But when small producers or local producers use this system, they often have to play the volume game in order to become profitable. And for them, that's just not ideal. And so the solution is to build out the digital and physical infrastructures to help them. This includes a central food hub and a online marketplace where people can order. And so when we have aggregated all the food, Now we can focus our energy on direct deliveries to customers, further making this a affordable option, just as comparable to commercially grown food. And so what makes us different is that we don't rely on margins, and we don't use wholesale methods, right? So the customer actually pays the food manufacturers directly. And because we have significantly reduced the travel time for food, our food is actually more fresh compared to store-bought. And because we don't have fixed prices, we're able to monitor and flex our prices to beat the competitors. Now, for the farmers and food makers, they just start on a 45-day free trial. It's monthly recurring after that, and we charge them a very small sales commission. For the customer, they only pay $8 for deliveries, and there's no minimum order because we don't operate on margins. So the real thing about us is that we have significant opportunity to grow from our business model, right? After this, we want to be able to supply restaurants and institutions, and then provide secondary services such as marketing, digital marketing, online services for our farmers and food makers. Thereafter, we can further reduce the retail price of products by providing local food makers logistics and product packaging, right? And if we're able to hit these 4 points, we can get to a point where we can have 100% reusable food packaging, further making us the optimal choice for food. Now, data shows that in 2018, the value of the US online grocery market was at $26 billion. And because of the pandemic, we can see that US online grocery sales hit a new record of $7.2 billion. Now, this really says that people are now more inclined, more able and educated, and know how to order groceries online. So the question really is then, who will win the online grocery market? Because competition is very fierce. We see that companies like Instacart, Walmart Grocery, and Amazon Fresh are kind of at the forefront of this. They either have a very large online market share or a very large physical presence, right? But they have yet to become the #1 choice. And that's because they view food as a one-time consumable good, and making it very hard for them to innovate and start helping the food suppliers. Now, what we do differently is that we start with a relationship with the food manufacturers, right? And business doesn't stop when we sell their product. That's really just the beginning, because we provide them secondary services. So we're serving two customers. We're serving both the food makers and customers, kind of propping ourselves up to become the #1 option in the future. And so this is just a general timeline of where we started and where we're headed. And so thank you for listening.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Frank. If you want to come off your screen share, we will get some feedback from Brett and Mary.
Yes. Anything?
I'll kick us off.
Any sense? So let me know.
Yeah. So I think that the one thing for me, right, and I obviously see a lot of food tech space and stuff in the food tech space. I think you're really doing what you're doing. You're really going to have to talk about how you're differentiated from the other players, because there are, and even your competitive landscape slide, like there's a lot of players in this space, tackling it from different directions. And so I think to be able to raise capital and to really get an investor on board, it's going to probably take two things. It's going to take some like traction and some validation, which we didn't hear anything about the traction and validation that you have like so far in your pitch. So that I would make sure that we add that in and talk about this is how we've proven it. This is how we know it works. But then also this is why we're different from, the milk runs, the other people that have very similar models to what you're doing. This is why we're better. Or maybe it's hey, this is just a huge market and there's going to be multiple geographic winners. We're going to win this area. But you have to have something in there around this is that. And I didn't really quite get that out of you just yet on this. So, I think that the other things you're going to have to overcome is historically, it's been a hard place to win because margins are tough. It is like, I know, but just margins and economics behind it it's just a hard thing to scale. And so thinking through, for me, again, in a longer form pitch, like when we're talking one-on-one, this is how we can scale this. This is how we can become that multi-billion-dollar company. And having really thought through that will be important for this company. And so I'm getting really specific into your idea just because I've seen a lot of these pitches. And I'd be really careful on that competitive analysis slide, because I'd see names on there that I know their pitches and I know their business models, and they would argue some things very differently from the way you framed it, right? And so just be aware of who you're pitching know, like if there's somebody that's like a food tech investor that's likely seen 10 of these types of pitches or similar pitches, like you got to be really careful of the way you present things, because that can immediately, how you handle that competitive analysis slide can either turn somebody off or be like, oh man, this person knows their stuff and they've got it down. So just be really aware of that competitive analysis side when it's a competitive market like you're in.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kong. That was great. Great to meet you as well. And I can give you the perspective of the more generalist investor who's not personally super deep in food tech, which I think is another big category of investor that food tech companies ultimately do pitch, given the lack of a huge number of firms in that space. So I definitely think, and I'll try to move on from the competitive landscape point momentarily, but I think that was my biggest piece of feedback as well, was framing that context. Which space do we fully play in now? And then what's our roadmap for where we're going to go? How do we differentiate? And perhaps you've done some of this on the back end already, but there's a big opportunity because it is relatively crowded space to really research your competitive landscape, research the market comps for companies who've come before you. What were they doing from a revenue perspective when they landed X valuation? For those who've exited, take a look at the major food companies who've done acquisitions in this space, understand what multiple of revenue they were trading at, just try to know the historical track record inside and outside as much as possible. And then what's your slice of that within that? I think also as a generalist point of view, when you are giving us your view on certain things that you're saying, like our food is twice as fresh, or when you're making these sort of claims about the superiority of your product, which you should be doing, if there's any data points you can use to back that up, either industry or specific, even better if specific to your company and your customer validation, just to like little tidbits of data sprinkled in to back up those claims, that's really powerful. I think on the I was intrigued by the slide about opportunities for growth and profitability, because we love to see the roadmap of where the company is headed. I think specifically translating each of those lines into revenue opportunities or what aspect of the business, it seemed like, we could go into a lot of different things all the way up through packaging.
Right.
How does that translate? And what's the business opportunity behind that from a numbers perspective? I would love to see that. And then lastly, this is like a super tactical thing, but on the market opportunity slide, I would recommend making that a little bit more visual versus text-based only. I think it's spice it up a little bit, maybe some graphs or bubbles or some more visual, some way to make it jump off the page a little bit more. But yeah, no, I thought that was a terrific presentation.
Can I give one more quick thing? So the fact that I remember this I love beautiful.ai. It's a great platform for founders to build slide decks on. When you're doing a presentation, make sure you download it or pay for the download, because it can be like, I noticed it, right? And so I was thinking about beautiful.ai for a minute, even though I should have been focused fully on your startup, on your company, and on your presentation. And again, it's an awesome tool. I love it. I think founders should use it more frequently because it does help you build a beautiful presentation. But the fact that I noticed that took away from me thinking about your company.
Right. And it's actually Stephanie who gave me the suggestion, so thank you.
You're very welcome. It looked awesome.
Thank you.
To use it or not to use the branding, you mean?
All right, Kong, thank you so much for joining us today. We really, really appreciate it. That was great, and best of luck.
Thank you.
Thanks,
you.
Colin.
Thank you so much, Kong. Great meeting you.
Up next, we have got Steph with WellRu, and Steph, go ahead and take it away.
Great, let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share WellRu. I'm Steph Peters, I'm the founder and CEO. So 70%, this is a number that I think about all the time, and the reason that I ultimately founded WellRu. According to the CDC, 70% of children diagnosed with ADHD do not receive parent training. And for children ages 4 to 6, parent training is the first line treatment. And for kids 6 and over, parent training is one of the recommended treatments. So to understand the reason that this 70% bothers me so much, I want to tell you a little bit more about myself. I have my doctorate in clinical psychology, and I focused on helping children and families. I went on to specialize in how to make healthcare cost less and be better at Stanford's Clinical Excellence Research Center. And the past couple years, I've been working as the behavioral medicine director for a digital healthcare startup called Carium. So why does this 70% bother me so much? I know how we should be helping families. I know that we need to be helping families. I know the reasons that we're not helping families because our healthcare system is so inefficient. And I also know that technology can be used to expand the scale and reach of existing resources to do a better job. To me, this is a problem that is solvable that has not yet been appropriately solved. So I've engaged some amazing clinical psychologists from some of the country's leading children's health systems to help me with this. And why is that 70% exist? Why aren't parents getting the help that they need? We know that there are not enough behavioral health providers to meet demand. We know transportation, time, and money get in the way. We know that parents don't necessarily know that parent training is a recommended treatment. We know care teams don't know who to refer to. And we know that the current self-guided parent training resources are not easily accessible. These challenges bring us an opportunity to really transform how we support kids and families. WellBrew's solution is engaging, it's structured, and it's scalable. The approach we take with our MVP, which is called the Behavior Studio, is a stepped approach, which means that it is not a replacement for therapy, it's not treating symptoms, but what we are trying to do is make sure that all parents have access to the basic science-backed skills that can support improving child behaviors. Our content is simple, the lessons are short, and we've broken down complex concepts into doable steps. That way parents gain confidence along the way. In terms of the market is big and growing fast. There's a study from Blue Cross Blue Shield that shows a 30% increase between 2010 and 2017 in ADHD diagnoses. And in the US commercially insured population alone, there are 2.4 million kids with ADHD. Our business model is B2B in incentivized markets, which means markets that are incentivized for better health and less spending. We take the per engaged member per month model, which is the most commonly used model for self-guided digital health solutions in self-insured employers. We know that payers, schools, and employers are incentivized to give their population, the parents in their population, these skills. In addition to these value prop, there's some emerging evidence that's showing that it's cost effective to give parents behavior training before medication. One study showed that doing so can save $728 per child. The cost for WellBrew, we're estimating it will be in the range that's most common for other self-guided digital behavioral health solutions adopted by self-insured employers. So between that $2 and $5 per engaged member per month range. Our traction, we've gotten great feedback from psychologists. We're in discussions with various types of systems, and we're really excited to be a part of Beta MN's fall cohort. What I'm looking for right now is runway to match the demand and scale of the current digital health environment. So a few months ago, I was told that there's no bandwidth to invest or scale pediatric digital health solutions, and that has changed dramatically in the past 8 weeks. So that's because of two reasons. One, healthcare is now unlocked, meaning that because we've shifted everything remote, everyone's more interested in using digital, which is great. And the other reason is that parents are doing a lot more of managing their kids at home and homeschooling, and there's more demand for supporting parents. So we want to be there to help parents with that. So I'm looking for one way to help make sure I can secure technical leadership to set WellBrew up for future expansion, prioritize best-in-class UX UI, and make sure we can meet the demand that's suddenly out there right now. And I hope with some extra support, WellBrew can really finally transform how parents and families are supported. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Steph. If you want to come off screen share, we'll get some reactions and feedback from Mary. You want to kick us off?
Sounds great. Yes. So thanks, Steph. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Also love the name and love the logo as well.
Thank you.
Great. So some feedback overall, I thought, and you referenced the end sort of pediatric digital health in general as a field. I think it would be fantastic to understand within the context of that, what is the ultimate space that WellRu wants to play in? Is it specific? Because we start the pitch and the narrative, which is a very specific focus on children diagnosed with ADHD, which certainly is the clear entry point for you. I'm curious to understand in the pitch is what's the ultimate vision, and then we can map the narrative around the market size and opportunity to that bigger. Because when you talked about the macro landscape around pediatric digital health is changing, is blowing wide open right now. I gravitated to that. So I think capturing the umbrella above it, and where's the space that you're going to play for V1? Will you expand to either age groups, demographics, other treatment plans and whatnot? So that's one sort of global piece of feedback. I think more specifically, it would be really interesting to see a little bit more detail and understand this is the very short form pitch, but on the product itself, and just if it's possible to embed a demo or some screenshots just to understand a bit more about, it sounded like it was a sort of a portal based education. Will it be mobile? Will it be, give us a little bit of that product roadmap that we can get more latched onto? And then from the perspective of business model, I didn't emerge with a clear understanding of, is it the payers, is it the schools, is it the employers, sort of which segments, can we translate that specifically to revenue projections? I know we're early in the life cycle now, but how big do we think, what are we underwriting to at the end of 2021, 22, 23? And then on the traction piece, you talked about some of the really good early feedback that you've been getting, particularly from the clinical experts. So are you live yet in market? If not, what's the timeline? It's totally fine if you're pre-launch. Just give us that tease out where you can expect to be headed, so that we know, at the end of 5 minutes, we'll hopefully understand where you are, when it's going live, when we can expect data, where you're going next. But those are some more specific things. But in general, clearly you bring a great degree of expertise, personal background. I loved the suite of providers, the clinical providers that you're partnering with. That helps validate a lot of credibility from the start.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Yeah. I think that you started off strong, like the pitch dynamics, you really do a great job of establishing yourself as great founder market fit, and truly an expert in the field. And so keep that in mind throughout the rest of your pitch, because I think you then spent some time re-emphasizing or backing up things. You then said, this is why, you talked about the problem up front, and then you talked about yourself, and then you kind of went back to why it's broken a little bit. I'm I don't really care. Or no, I already believed you that it's broken. You believed you had me. You had me. I believed you that it was broken, right? Because you told me it was broken, and then you said, I'm an expert. And I was yeah, she sounds like an expert. And then you told me it was broken again, and you actually stumbled too. It was the transition was also not smooth from one to the next. So I would either say, move the why it's broken up front. So not up front, but you say, here's the problem. Here's why it's broken. I'm the expert, this is true. Rearrange that portion of the pitch, or take out the here's why it's broken, because going back to it felt off to me a little bit. And then the other thing, Mary covered a lot of stuff, so I'm not going to get too much into anything else, but market size was something else. You talked about this many kids are diagnosed with it. And then you talked about how much you're paying, but you're making me do math. And when you're making me do math in a pitch, I'm not listening to you. I'm doing math, trying to do math quickly in my head. And so close that loop for me. And that's a bit of what Mary's talking about is what's next, what's this look like in 2, 3, 5 years, but also just your total opportunity here. How big can it be? And I also, the other thing I was going to point out, which is Mary said, is product. I understand kind of how you're trying to fix the problem, but I don't understand where are you doing it on an app? Are you doing it on a website? Are you doing it on how where does this actually happen? Where are you doing this? And I have no idea still. I have guesses, right? I have guesses, but I don't really know.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Steph, that went really fast, but it was fantastic. We really thank you so much for being part of this, and yeah. Great job.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to meet you both, and thank you for the feedback. It's amazing.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, really well done. Well done.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Up next, we have Michelle from We Sparkle.
Hello, my name is Michelle Marantz, and I am the founder and CEO of WeSparkle. We help small businesses save time and increase their revenues via a suite of AI-powered software tools. The reason why we're so passionate about helping small businesses is because they make up over 90% of all businesses in the US, and they generate 2/3 of net new jobs in our economy. Prior to starting WeSparkle, I was the Chief of Strategic Initiatives at NIDA, which is a community development financial institution that helps minority entrepreneurs succeed. That's how I met Melissa. She owns the Beauty Lounge Minneapolis, and she spends about 40% of her time just on repetitive administrative tasks like scheduling appointments, rescheduling appointments, and answering the same questions over and over again from her customers. She knows that marketing can help her increase her sales, but she rarely has time to focus on it. She wants to expand her salon into a bigger space, but she often feels stuck working in her business instead of on her business. And Melissa's not alone. There are millions of entrepreneurs all over the US and around the world who feel the same way as Melissa. They range from salons to massage therapists to chiropractic offices. That's why we came up with our first solution. We help businesses optimize their productivity via our first tool. It's called the Sparkle Assistant. And it's a conversational AI assistant that helps businesses with scheduling appointments, including Zoom sessions, which I'm sure many of you are participating in these days. It answers frequently asked questions on behalf of the business. It also automatically upsells the business's products and services during the booking process. And lastly, it automatically encourages referrals from customers by letting customers know that if they leave a review, then a donation will be made to a charitable cause of their choice. And we're already getting really great feedback from our customers, including Rebecca, who is a bookkeeper who owns Phoenix Growth Systems. She signed up for the Sparkle Assistant after using it, and she just finds it really easy to use. And there are many people like Rebecca. In terms of market size, there are 582 million entrepreneurs globally and 31 million in the US. Our first focus really, though, are on the 11.2 million entrepreneurs who are in 3 major industries. These are the professional or technical services, so that includes bookkeepers, accountants, lawyers, consultants, the healthcare and social assistance industry, which includes home health aides and childcare, and personal services, so this includes salons and pet care businesses. The reason why we're really focused on these 3 industries is because they are majority dominated by women, and women are the fastest growing segment of entrepreneurs. Overall, the global productivity management software market size is predicted to be about $107 billion by the end of 2021. In terms of our sales projections, we are going to be working over the next 5 years, and we're already working on it, to achieve about 1.5% of that overall first target market. So that 11.2 million entrepreneurs in those 3 major industries that I mentioned before. And we truly are the team to do this. We have the grit, the passion, and the experience to make this happen. We have combined over 23 years of experience in digital technology and marketing and strategy for small businesses. So I am the Chief Executive Officer, and Nick Weber is the Chief Technology Officer. We met about 7 years ago in 2013 at the American Academy of Neurology. I was leading the digital team, and Nick was our senior web developer. And together we managed 8 different websites for the American Academy of Neurology, several web apps, and we even built 2 digital health award-winning apps. But one of our favorite projects was our first AI project. We built out what the board of directors called the Google of neurology. So essentially we built out a semantic search engine for neurology that crawled 8 different scholarly journals and delivered personalized search results to various user personas. So that ranged from clinical practitioners, neuroscientists, to patients and caregivers. And now we are working on WeSparkle. We've gained a lot of traction, even though we've only been around for around a year. First of all, I did a lot of research, interviewing and observing entrepreneurs as an inaugural Finovation Fellow. Last year, we were proud to win the Minnesota Cup Impact Division, as well as the overall crowd favorite. Earned a lot of seed funding through different grants and pitch competitions, and we're also featured in Forbes. What we're most excited about is when we tested out our AI assistant with 3 salons earlier this year. The assistant helps these 3 salons connect with over 140 new customers and book an extra $1,000 worth of services over the course of 2 weeks. And this was in January, which is typically a very slow time of the year for salons because it's very cold here in Minnesota. And it's kind of that post-holiday lull that happens. We secured a contract with CoMotion, which is a co-working space centered around movement. So there's a boxing gym, a ballet school, and physical therapists that occupy that space. And we're even starting to make some ripples across the pond to London. We were asked to do an interview with female founders weekly there. So we know that our reach is starting to reach around the world. We're very proud to have won the Launch Minnesota Innovation Grant to continue helping with our development efforts. And we've been getting a lot of interest from companies that service other small businesses. So a large CPA company that builds websites for smaller CPA companies. And they are interested in licensing and reselling our assistant to their network of small businesses. So we're currently have about 6 licensing agreements in the pipeline that we're finalizing. For us though, the best part is really all of the great feedback that we're getting from our customers and how it saved them time and made their lives easier. And unprompted from us, they're posting on social media about purchasing their assistant and using it, encouraging others to as well. Right now, we are raising $750,000 in seed funding to finalize the development of this minimal viable product and working to incorporate the customer feedback that we've heard to add additional features to the assistant. So we ask that you please visit wesparkle.ai, subscribe, get your own Sparkle Assistant, and connect with us at info@wesparkle.co. So thank you very much for supporting entrepreneurs like me, for supporting entrepreneurs like Melissa. We are very appreciative for letting your light shine and helping others to shine so that together we sparkle.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. All right, Mary and Brett, you want to kick us off with some feedback?
Yeah, I'll dive in first. Great job. That was fun. So a couple things. Like one is there's a lot of text all over the deck. And there's a saying like when people are reading, they're not listening. And so especially when you're pitching and you have a deck like that, that's something that really stood out to me. And you also read like every single thing you had in the text, you read all the points too. And so, so I think it slowed the cadence of the overall pitch down. And so, it almost like, what are the 1 or 2 key things you want to make sure you point out in the traction or about the team or about the market and the market size and how you're thinking about market size. And so you were like really, really thorough in going through everything. And I'd say almost a little bit like too thorough for this format of a pitch. And as you get into longer form pitches, like I think it's okay to dig a bit deeper. But again, like if I always say like founders should have 2 decks, one that they're pitching off of and one that they're emailing out. And the one that you're pitching off of should have very little writing on it. And more just big numbers and big graphs and things like that support whatever the words that are coming into your mouth are. And then when you email off, then you could have more content on it so it can be read because it's tough to understand what's going on in a deck if there isn't more explanation around it. So again, you want people to be listening to you and getting to know you through the pitch rather than reading what's on the deck. On the traction piece, just one thing on your traction, it felt like you were just like reading me a grocery list. When you're talking through your traction, you have some really cool, impressive things there. But I think some of your more impressive things in the more impressive traction that you're getting almost got drowned out by like the laundry list, like giving me a laundry list of everything. And so like, what are like, especially in something like this, it's like, what's that hook? What's going to get the investor to take a full length meeting with you? And so pick out those 1 or 2 hooks out of that that you think are the most impressive things. Or like depending on who your audience is, maybe that somebody's interested in LaunchMN, and so you won the LaunchMN grant, or somebody's interested in a certain company, so call those out. But those would just be a couple of quick things that I would focus in on and drill down on.
Awesome, thanks, Brett. Michelle, that was fantastic. I think as far as tone and cadence and your sense of your authoritative ownership of the business came across like you nailed that, super confident, and you hit the time. That was really, really well done. In addition to what Brett covered, just a few things that I would point out. One is really interesting, especially the AI component of the product. Would love to get into a little bit more of the detail on the tech itself and the tech differentiation. Is it built in house? What makes it Is it off the shelf? Sort of just a little bit more detail around
Mhm.
the actual product and tech itself. Maybe a couple more example use cases that have been, and the one with the salon was compelling as far as what the ROI has been for them. But I think just double click on the product tech stack a little bit more, because that seems really like the fundamental uniqueness of the business. The second is, would love to get a little bit more into the pricing model and the pricing structure itself. You appreciate that you had the projections in a few years out, which is exactly what we hope to see. Understanding, is it SaaS? Is it like, what is the price point? And maybe that hasn't yet been fully defined, but I think showing that in the 5-minute pitch definitely should cover that. And then the last thing, I like how you have been creative about the bootstrapping phase of the business and getting a lot of these innovation grants, and is exactly what you should be doing, is taking advantage of early available resources. I think it's important, if you are going to be pitching venture investors, differentiate, because that's all a positive thing, what you should be doing. But my mind immediately goes to, is this an impact investment, social impact company? Is it the venture model? So just, I think, having clarity around what type of business this is, what the end game is, who I'm pitching, it's venture backable, like this is the business model.
Mhm.
That landscape can get a little bit fuzzy sometimes if it's, we're going after, we're a grants-based business. And so that's just one thing I would underscore to think through articulation. But I really enjoyed that. That was terrific.
Thank you.
Awesome. Any final thoughts? Olive has a lot of thoughts here at my.
The pups agree that it was great.
I would just I would reiterate, what are especially in this format of a pitch, what are those couple key things you want an investor to walk away with, right? What's the thing that makes your company special? Is it your product? Is it your team? Is it your traction? Is it the market that you're attacking, right? And what's that one thing? And so I agree, you're super thorough, and obviously you know your space, and obviously you have a great tech background, and your team is well connected and you know each other. But what's it's almost like if I have too many things on my plate in front of me, I don't know which one to hook on to. And so I want to make sure that I remember you in a week, right? Or in 2 weeks, or in 3 weeks, right? Or a month. And so what's that one thing that even if I remember nothing else about WeSparkle, what's the one thing? And make sure, and sometimes you give that laundry list, or that full picture in a 5-minute pitch, it's hard for me to remember which one, what's that one thing that makes you special. And I really want to make sure that comes through, and that you reiterate that. And that's because that's what can get you that meeting, that next meeting, or when you're raising a Series A with a Series A investor that might be watching the pitch or the video, that's what they're going to remember about you.
Do you have any recommendations on what are some key things that maybe stood out for you, or that I should highlight more, or that in general you're impressed when you hear that kind of key fact?
Yeah, I think every company is different. I genuinely think every company is different, and what their key thing can be different. I actually liked your co-founder story. That probably might be what stood out to me. You guys have a long background and history together, and building cool stuff together, and have built this pretty quickly together and gotten some traction. I tend to like the personal stories. Another thing that stands out to me always is when founders have huge visions. This is where it gets hard, because different investors have different things that stand out to them. I love big, hairy, scary visions that are probably impossible, but they always I remember them. And then I like the founder stories of why you started a company. Those are the ones that tend to stand out to me.
And for me, I think you and your co-founder have very strong, solid. I love teams that are very strong on product and tech. And you have that's a unique differentiator. So I think, and that's why that was my first point of get into that a little bit more. But I think validating that, hey, this is AI driven technology, we're the team to build it, here's why, that's a real leg up on in a competitive market is one. And then two, if what you're building is general enough to be repurposable across other industries, that gets really exciting too, right? You have a very clear focus for this, but there's no reason that this technology can't translate into XYZ, ABC industries out there. And so I think giving a little bit of that, I think those two things, wow, this is a really strong technical team. They're the ones to do it. And this has broad applicability to become $1 billion company.
That's great. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Michelle. That was fantastic. I know it went super quickly. You were awesome. And thank you again for sharing WeSparkle with us.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Have a great
Later.
one again.
Yes, you too.
All right, so that's it for us, according to Olive. Brett and Mary, huge thank you for all of that. Really appreciate all of your insights and time. Any last pieces of advice for people pitching venture investors?
I think it's just, continue to be fearless and don't worry about, this is a business and industry where we all get a lot of no's on both sides of the table, and just continue to be ironclad in your vision and conviction for what you're building. Don't be afraid to knock on every possible door, and don't be discouraged when the answer is no. And that goes for investors as well.
Make sure you let your personality come through too. We're investing in people as much as ideas, especially at an early stage investor, and so we want to get to know you. And so practice it, but then don't become over practiced, and let your personality shine through a little bit, because that can be memorable as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone, and have a fantastic Twin Cities Startup Week.
Thanks everybody. Take care.